Got it.
So, good morning, Dr. Robert Sands. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm eager to mind meld.
Excellent. That is great to hear. And I am eager to mind meld too. And our subject today kind of got me stimulated by coming across a video I saw, and I'd really love to talk to you about this. And I have to say, I think I am guilty of over processing and overusing what we're talking about today, and that is the subject of the inner child. And I saw a video the other day, and a guy was talking about the inner child and how there's not really much difference. You know, we're just human beings, and one's an older human being, and one's a younger human being. And how we should, kind of, he was talking about age regression stuff. But he was saying, really, there isn't much difference between the adult and the child. And I was thinking, well, after all our conversations we've had, if you let the child part of you not grow up and remain as it was and try and run the world, or maybe that's what's happening, who knows, we'd be in a really weird place. And I am guilty, like I say, of when I'm facilitating work with clients and helping to change and reframe their lives, of talking about the inner child and entertaining the inner child. And really, I've only just really started in thinking, I don't know, I don't know about this. So just tell me your opinion on what we think, or what you think the inner child is and what it does for us.
Well, I always begin with concrete basics. We were all children, for sure. Everyone was a child, and we all went through the ladder of development. We were all 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and so forth. So, and then adolescence is a kind of a recapitulation of an opportunity to work through some of the childishness that was perhaps excessive, a little bit too much child. And adolescence gives you an opportunity to climb the ladder. But my comments are all organized around the premise that we want people to climb the ladder. We want them to move forward. We want them to develop. We want them to move from a less developed state to a more developed state. So
Absolutely.
that means you move from childhood, childish, we have to be careful here because being childish sounds critical. Being childlike can be a compliment. But if you're fixated, here's a common term in my profession, if you're fixated at a lower level, then perhaps the author of the inner child that you listen to is like a Peter Pan. And Peter Pan was about forever being a child. You don't have to grow up. And in my work with children, there are kids that will say out loud, they're usually around 10, 11, 12. They don't want to grow up. They're a little bit anxious.
Mm.
They're fixated. They want to stay at home. They're not adventuresome. And so that we might say their inner child is fixated or stuck rather than progressive. And of course, I always, in working with people, encourage them to move forward. So maybe I could stop my comment there and say there's some universal qualities to a child. We've all been there. The idea of, as an adult, cultivating an inner child is like, for what purpose? And now therapies claim, this is an old claim, that if you regress into your inner child, you can kind of work through and bring your inner child along with you. You, in your mind's eye, you see your own inner child wounded, hurting, alone, and you, the adult, take them by the hand, you put them on your lap, you talk to them, and you bring them forward and encourage them to move forward. Now, that's a therapeutic strategy that's a blend of hypnosis and basic support, you might say. You want to support the part of yourself that's afraid by saying, you can do it. You have the courage. You have what it takes. It's like a coach. A coach would say that, get out there. Yeah, you can do it. So the language of the inner child can either be developed into a whole genre or therapeutic school, which I've been exposed to back in the 90s. The inner child work was very prominent. And as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, we thought, well, this makes a certain amount of sense. So Peter Pan, think of Peter Pan, think of people that don't want to grow up. And why would a person encourage someone to be more childlike instead of more adult-like?
Well, for me, it really associates really strongly with what you said the last time we were talking. That really kind of blew my mind, which was how the great yearning of humans is just to have a life with no consequences. It just still makes me laugh now, because so let me ask you this, because I'm kind of, you said something that I found really interesting, and I wrote it down so I didn't forget. So you said adults can have playfulness. Why assign it to the child? And it was one of those moments, and I thought, yes, why do we always go back to, you've got to entertain your inner child, you've got to heal your inner child? I understand that, because I went on a course once with this guy called Costa Lambrius, and his course was called "It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood." And it was a brilliant course. He was a very good facilitator, and it was all about that age regression, going back, exactly like you said, being the mentor to the younger self and all that kind of stuff. I kind of get that in a way. But I mean, I know this is a bizarre question to ask, especially I'm laughing as I'm hearing it myself, but it's like, do we actually have this inner child? Does it exist? Does this inner child exist? Or have we got to be just, yeah, we're okay, we're adults and we can still play, we can still have fun, we can still be silly, we can still roll around the floor laughing, and we can, do we have to have this inner child that I've always gone on about constantly? do we have it?
Well, it's a construct. I mean, it's like all things are really ideas that become popular and embraced by groups, and so everybody uses the same language. Oh, let's talk inner child talk. So I guess it's real. We are very suggestible creatures. So if you take somebody and say, oh, you need to practice your inner child and be more playful, you're too serious, and adults are serious and they're going to die of terminal seriousness, and so they need to practice their inner child. I would say you don't have to even talk about an inner child. You might look at somebody and say, loosen up, laugh a little, and go to a laughter group where you just laugh. They have these funny groups. I laugh when I think about it. You go to a laughter group and nobody talks, they just start laughing, and then before long they're all laughing. Some people are falling on the floor, and this is deemed therapeutic. Now, is that an inner child? I think these are adults who are practicing a state of mind, and it's contagious. Laughter is contagious. Laughter is best medicine, kind of thing. And then you move on and get back to your job, and it's kind of taking a break. So it's just a way of talking about life that appeals to people, I guess. Oh, your inner child. I mean, I can remember my child years. I remember laying on the grass and looking at the clouds. I remember running through the woods. It was wonderful. But I also ran through the woods when I was 20, 30, 40, 50. I even go into the woods now. Am I an inner child? Is that my inner child, or is that me really feeling life as an adult. So
Absolutely.
I think we just need to pick our language. If you like the inner child language, I think that's fine. It's kind of cute and moving, as long as you don't fixate on it or become too caught up, to take it too seriously and use it as an argument that adults are bad, they're too serious, they all need to become children again. That's not going to help anybody.
Well, that's the point, because like you say about running through the woods, I think it's an act, because when you talk about the inner child and inner child work and inner child therapy, it's a really interesting thing to completely reframe that and say, well, it's your adult fun, it's adult, liberation, or whatever word you want to call it. It's adult happiness. It's really kind of made me whole think about it, because you're right, it's like, oh, it's the inner child and it has to be stroked and it has to be, wrapped up in cotton wool, and it has to be, or you can only be exuberant, like you say, at a workshop where you're rolling around laughing on the floor. And this what this bloke said when I heard this little clip about what he considered the inner child to be, because I was listening to it and I thought to myself, I completely disagree with that, because he was saying, oh, people think the inner child is about, the adult is about, the difference between the inner child and the adult is the adult takes responsibility and is very serious and has to go to work and blah blah blah. And really, no, there's no difference. And I thought, well, actually no, because adults do have to do all that stuff. And they do that is, like you say, it's the evolving process, it's the growing up process, it's the path of life process, isn't it? You do actually have to start working and getting some qualifications if you want to go up in life and all that. Because my mind was just like, okay, so you'd have a load of 12-year-olds, or even younger than that, trying to run the world and make decisions. And then you look at some of the decisions that are made. But just moving on, but because it kind of, like I say, ties into what we were talking about before, and this fantastic thing you said about the great yearning of humans. So if you were in that state of, okay, I get that adults have to have fun, I get that adults must keep having fun. We don't have to refer to it as the inner child. We don't have to do that. Okay. And you do take responsibility as a human. But what really kind of got me is this consequence thing. Okay. Have you heard of Aleister Crowley? Are you familiar with Aleister Crowley? Okay, so Aleister Crowley was a very famous British sorcerer, a magician who practiced, all the old kind of, religions, and he came up with his own magical occult called Thelema, right? And this phrase I'm about to tell you was his famous phrase. And it really ties in with the inner child, the adult, and a life of no consequences, right? Because his adage was, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Okay. And it's become associated with, people that follow Satanism and whatever, because the idea is like, anyone can do anything. It doesn't matter. It's the whole of the law. Obviously, I believe in karma. Whatever you give out, you attract. Whatever you align with, whatever you think about, you bring about, all that kind of stuff. So if we're talking about child, adolescent, adult, are we living in a society where people really do want to live by the great, they called him the beast, Aleister Crowley, because he went a bit bonkers with power, craze, strangeness. Are we living in a society where people want to just do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law? I mean, it really goes in with what you were saying about the great yearning, not of no consequences.
Well, I mean, there is, well, I don't know anyone who really wants to be consequenced, but most people who are thoughtful will agree that without consequences, we get divorced from reality, because reality is the ultimate consequencer. It's there.
I like that. Reality is the ultimate consequencer.
Well, you've heard the phrase, you can't cheat reality. Gravity is always going to get you in the end. And there's a lot of different forms of reality. And we all want, although, we all want to not have consequences for our actions. And then we learn that a part of being socialized is discovering there are consequences, and you accept that. And then you become a socialized person. You realize that if you speed, you're going to get pulled over. If you go, like in our country, it's 69, you're mine. So the cops say 69. If you go 68, you're okay, 69. So these are all boundaries and rules and reality. Call it social reality. And we don't want that, but the more you join it and view it as your friend and become an adult, this is a part of becoming an adult, is that you identify with the value of the structure and the culture and the mores and the folkways and the habits and the consequences, and you live through them and you hold them up. The American Indians say that we need to hold up the sky. It's sometimes sexualized. If the men hold up the sky and the women are of the earth, but it's the job of men is to hold up the sky, or it all comes crashing down. So it implies being responsible for one's family, community, doing the right thing. These are all burdens. What child wants to hear that? They just want to play and have fun because they're undeveloped. And then when a child is around 8, 9, 10, they start to realize about death. Their mind matures. If they're intelligent, they start to look around and see the world, and then they become different. It's a part of this ladder of development that includes the self-discovery of the world and its rules. But the yearning to have no rules is apparently on the ascendancy. Let's all have fun and let's all be little children.
Well,
I call it the ascendancy of narcissism.
And that's exactly the point I was about to go on to. So taking it one step further, are we in a bizarre era at the moment where if you like, indulging the inner child has almost resulted in a completely disempowered, almost disabled generation? And I know it's not all one age, and I know there's some brilliant people of all generations that do fantastic things, but
always exceptions.
Yeah, and it's at where we're at now. This inner child has been overindulged and it doesn't want to grow up. It doesn't want to take responsibility. Even worse, Bob, there's actual inner child maniacs in positions of power around the world. It's just like, just doing as they want. I'll just do what I want. I'll make this law. I saw in America, there's this new law coming called the Restrict Law, where you can't basically question anything that the government's doing. Otherwise, you'll be sent to jail for 20 years. I mean, where is the consequence to these people just making it up as they go along?
Well, it's political, but it's really more cultural. And in a culture, I met a woman once at a program who wrote a book called Affluenza.
Yeah.
About affluence and its effect on the development of people. And her thesis was, and I think I agree with it, that affluence tends to create false worlds where you have money and you can indulge your children and you don't have to grow up and you get to have your way and you live like the uber rich are sometimes portrayed as children run amok. They just do whatever they want because they have no reality. Another type of reality other than gravity is financial reality, where if you overspend, there's a consequence. And a part of your development is reality encourages you to become more mature and responsible. But in an age that advertises that having fun and doing what you want and having your dream, this gets into the great dream talk, or make a wish, that every child should have their wish, is a culture of wish fulfillment and indulgence. And it's not in the interest of the children. It does not support them in climbing the ladder, which is crucial. If we're going to survive, we need children to climb the ladder of development and take their position in the world. And by the way, it's great to be an adult. You get to see things. You live in harmony with reality. You know how the world works. You can predict things. You can protect yourself. It's so wonderful to have a mind that is not perverted by these false messages that are heralded as a great mana, or devilish mana. I don't know about the devil, but there's certainly anti-development. There's a lot of forces that do not want people to grow up. They think that children should just have their way and somebody else should pave the way for them. And it's really, I hear a lot of people have dismay. You're expressing dismay. It's like, how can this be? How can a culture survive if it's going to encourage irresponsibility and subvert and encourage victimization and pedestalize and put high up somebody who's victimized and discourage those who have courage and who have worked their way? They should somehow be pushed to the side, and somebody who has no merit be pushed to the top. So there's all sorts of contradictions in the modern world. There's the dogs barking. So
they agree. They're agreeing with you. They think that's a very good point that you just made. So going on from that, there's one thing I wanted to say. Okay, no problem. Well, look, that's a fantastic image. Look at that. It's like a fantastic disappearing and appearing. That was like, it looked like an apparition disappearing into the mountain. That was great. So there's two things I wanted to say. And one was, you just reminded me of it, and it's a little bit out of place, but I'll say it anyway. The Native American Indians have this saying that if someone was sick, they would say, when did you last stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop laughing? And I forget the other ones. There's all this stuff that is, and again, they don't mention inner child. They just say, when did you stop doing this? When did you stop, dancing and, dancing in the rain or having fun? So I just wanted to say that because you mentioned the Native American Indians. And I thought, yeah, they had that thing about just any time of your life. You could be any age and still, dance naked around a fire or play your drum or do whatever, that you like to do. So, and then going on to this thing you said about how it's great to be an adult and it's great not to have that kind of, because I was saying about, so I've written down here, I wanted to ask you about social engineering here, because inner child stuff and the whole moving into adulthood, I wanted to get your opinion on how much do you think we are socially engineered? And they say that through the decades, there's been various, like I said, ad campaigns. When they wanted more tax in the world, they were had the massive ad push about women going back to work and how women were, empowering women and going so they could go back to work, and obviously they get their tax. And there's all this kind of underlying social engineering. So you have children, bright young things who go to schools, and they've shown in studies, I'm a bit wary of who did these studies. I've not seen the research. I just have to believe that it was done and this was the outcome. I haven't actually sat while they studied all these things, which is why I'm mistrustful of anything that's done like this. But they did these studies where children's intelligence and creativity dropped when they went to school. It was like completely dimmed when they went to school. And then you get an upsurge of shame and guilt and a general kind of slumping of life. And have you come across that? Do you think it's a social engineered thing to take the spark and the thing out of kids, or do you think it's just a natural thing of being in the world and like you say, facing reality? This is what it is. You meet some kids that are good at maths and you're not, and you meet some kids that are brilliant at sports and other people aren't, and whatever. Do you think that's a reality thing, or is it engineered?
Well, of course, that's a big educational debate about structured education versus free education, where there's very few limits. Maybe the limits would be imposed by the child's encounter with phenomenon, like in science or whatever. And I do think there can be overly oppressive, if that's the right word, or squelching, the fear of squelching the spirit of the child if they encounter a boundary or a piece of reality testing is bogus. I mean, the children need to give up their false view of the world, their innocence. They don't know squat. They're ignorant. They're not stupid because they're too young to be stupid. They just don't know how the world works. And the purpose of life is to encounter real life, real people, and to experience consequences and learn from them. And that's how you emerge. You emerge from innocence, ignorance, naivete. Naivete is a form of innocence where you think everybody's good and then you find out that's not true. You have to go through that to grow up. So if you don't let the child encounter, they have to go through disappointment. They have to go through heartbreak. So education isn't about squelching the child's spirit. It's about transforming it into an energy that will engage life and function with reality, not fantasy. So they come out of fantasy, out of naivete, and into reality that includes social reality, physics, the how the world works, the consequences of friendship or romance, and how to regulate yourself. All of these complex things are best built and discovered through actual life experience. And yes, it is deflationary, and it does cause the child to feel like, oh, I want to go back to my fantasy world, where my cartoon world, where people die and then they pop right up. And
Absolutely.
know,
You said something
so
really interesting there that I just want to pick up on, and that is, do you think, as well as your great comment the last time about this whole thing about the great yearning is not to have consequences, here's another a lovely simplistic phrase, but I think you're on the nail again, which is heartbreak avoidance. People really want to live their life through heartbreak to avoid heartbreak. But obviously, when you get heartbreak, there's nothing like having your heart broken to really kind of explode a few things in your soul and give you an opportunity to learn how to heal and how to get over it. Do you think there's a lot of that going on now? Anything to keep everything safe and everything on the level? Do you tell me about what you think about heartbreak avoidance?
well, when I work with teenagers, I'll frequently say, you need to have your heart broken at least 3 or 4 times before you can find a relationship where it's more suitable and less driven by heartfelt yearnings. So I think it's natural to avoid pain. So everybody's phobic, and they don't want to be in pain. And some people have more courage, are willing to go back. They lick their wounds, they have their heart broken, they go back and they do it again, and then they do it again. And about the third or fourth time, they're really smart. They've learned a lot. And if you really try and avoid that by being avoidant or phobic, these words now are thrown around, avoidant, phobic, then you don't develop. You're postponing. You will develop sooner or later, but you're postponing it, and you're isolating yourself and you're, if you think of life as a river, you want to be in the river, maybe on the bank, maybe up to your ankles, maybe swimming at times. And you want to be able to swim upstream. You want to be able to go with the current. All of these vicissitudes of life are you benefit from full involvement with life, not avoidance.
And what's quite interesting about that, it makes me think about these people who are going through these big, massive traumas, problems, issues, whatever word I would want to use, regarding, say, something like gender, because it's almost like they're in the river, or they're on the river bank, say. They definitely don't want to have their heart broken by a doctor or a psychiatrist saying to them, you're meeting reality. Your fantasy of being identified as a penguin is now meeting reality, because you can't live in Arctic Circle and swim in freezing cold water looking for fish. It's like you can't do it. And what I find interesting, it's almost like, again, like we said before, there's an expectation that everyone else in the river should come and sit on the bank with them, that they shouldn't kind of swim, and they shouldn't go upstream, and they shouldn't do whatever they want. They have to come. And again, that massive controlling thing. You have to indulge me in my non-reality. This is what you must do. And if you don't do it, you're labeled a plethora of names, and you're called the one that's not kind of fair and just. It's like, so that's kind of that. It looks like it's rife in the community, in society now. Would you say? Would you agree with that? It's getting worse.
Well, that's very well put. I see it as the great mistake of educators is to recommend accommodation to the child. We should not accommodate. Our job is to not abandon them to their fantasies and wishes, but to put them in a holding environment, keep them in that holding environment where they're protected. You encourage them, you love them, but you do not accommodate. Why in the world would you accommodate as a parent, let alone a whole culture? Why would you expect a whole culture of millions of people to change themselves to embrace a delusion or a false idea or a wish fulfillment or a fantasy? So what you said, I completely agree with, but unfortunately, and this is one of the mistakes of educators, they believe that accommodation to the wishes of the child is the way to happiness, but it's really the way to hell. It's not the way to develop.
I was interested what you said about how certain things didn't really work in the world of psychiatry, and even though they were tried, they were abandoned. And I love this thing about, you were talking, I mean, I know we've got to finish in a minute, but maybe we can bring this out about this whole culture about, because it kind of ties in, always doing what for others, and I think there's a generation, or there's a type of person around at the moment that knows how to manipulate and say doctors or lawmakers, or to manipulate a situation into making people think that this is it, and this is how it has to be. And the big thing about manipulation is that you'll don't you always get people who manipulate, and always people who can be manipulated. And it's always like people who are manipulators always seem to have like a radar for those who will just give in to their manipulation, don't they? But there seems to be a lot of that around now.
Well, I mean, they've always been there, and that's why it's so important to develop the individual to have the strength to at least have a chance to know when you're being manipulated. We've all been manipulated. We've all been hypnotized in a way. We've all been sold, marketed, seduced, all sorts of things. And we learn from it and have more agency. I guess that's one concept, is personal agency, that you can see it coming, and so you're less prone for mass hypnosis or a cultural mistake. So if somebody comes up to you and says, and obviously they're not the sex they claim, and they insist that you call them something. You say, well, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do that. And if they threaten you, so it becomes a point of personal courage, whether one, you can recognize that you're being hoodwinked or seduced or manipulated. Machiavelli, I guess Machiavellianism is the political philosophy of manipulation and plans within plans and plots. Average people are just trying to get their life, we're just trying to live our life, and we're not interested in power.
No.
And
so I know we've got to finish. We're right on the limit, but just before we go, I'd like to just bring that point up that you just said, which I think is fantastic. Because if someone says to you, you've got to call them a certain thing, it's quite empowering to turn around and go, well, I'm not comfortable with that. It's almost reflecting their own behavior back at them. I'm not comfortable with that because it's a reality in my mind. I don't subscribe to it. And I need to find a safe space, because now you've tried to make me call you they, and there's only one of you. It's like, but it's like, and I think choosing a pronoun like they says it all, because it's like multiple aspects of they, kind of in this. Anyway, we've got to stop. So we can possibly pick that up the next time, but we've got a great idea for a chat the next time, and I think we might need even a little bit longer, because I don't think we'll ever fit it into half an hour. So Dr. Robert Sands, I'm so blessed by your friendship and knowing you, and always having access to this fantastic mind of yours. Thank you again so much for your time and your willingness to be open and honest and bring this reality into our world. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Diane, for the mind meld. It's been great fun.
It's a meld very much worth having. So thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.